That because I did not want to give the prison officials the satisfaction to see me show any weakness. And if one doesn't prepare himself...
According to an unclassified summary of the March intelligence assessment, the two most lethal elements of the domestic violence extremist threat are racially motivated violent extremists and militia violence.
Okay, welcome to the American Archipelago, and today we're going to talk about a little institution where Jeffrey Epstein died, and it's MCC, New York. And wonderful facility. I did time at the MCC San Diego, and all prisons like ubiquitous in their design, like they're all the same. Like medium security facilities or these X houses. I'll do a little podcast probably about how prisons are just designed because it's on this panopticon design. But they're ubiquitous basically. So the MCC in San Diego is exactly like the MCC in New York. And from that, especially with the death of Jeff Epstein, how suspicious it was, I had a few conclusions about that and a few observations, and I do this essay collection regularly on prisons. So I'm going to be, and I actually did have a channel that I was doing this. It was its own channel, but getting people that interested in prison for an everyday kind of thing, whereas it's all government malfeasance, right? So like and subscribe, and share, please. Yeah, knock you down for a little, card deal. I hope not, but I'll get my knees dirty if I have to. All right, let's talk about MCC New York before I end up sucking you off through the screen. Homoerotic joke, a classic part of prison life. Yeah, no, it really is though. I mean, you'll have guys saying some stuff that will, have men at a gay club sitting there thinking, wow, that was a little, that was disgusting. Anyway, yeah, so this is MCC New York, and it is a prison that was built in like the early 70s. And I'm just going to read off a little section on Wikipedia just to give you a little primer. Obviously, don't trust Wikipedia for everything. But it gives a good little, roundabout summary. The Metropolitan Correction Center, New York, MCC New York, is a United States federal administrative detention facility, meaning that you will do time there pre-trial, although they'll always have a sentenced floor. So you have guys who work there, and that was one of me. Oh, that was except in San Diego. But literally it's the same design, except San Diego is actually taller, and I think it had a little bit less land it was sitting on, just from this little picture that's captioned here. Of Lower Manhattan, New York City, located on Park Row behind the Thurgood Marshall United States Courthouse at Foley Square. Is operated by the federal BOP, Bureau of Prisons, and a division of the United States Department of Justice. And MCC New York holds male and female prisoners of all security levels. Most prisoners held at MCC New York have pending cases in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. MCC New York also holds prisoners serving brief sentences, exactly as I said. So, history. Opened up in 1975 in the Civic Center neighborhood of Lower Manhattan, MCC New York was the first high-rise facility to be used by the BOP. And I think the MCC San Diego opened up in 1977. But these were all part of Nixon's push to basically start the DOJ into this drug enforcement rabbit hole that it went down. And it's still down. And in this prison has held some like top dogs. I mean, just because the virtue of where it's located. Now, MCC San Diego, where I was, just a little non sequitur almost, but it held a lot of Chinese immigrants. It was crazy how many, because they call them matwits, which material witnesses, and and that means literally they're telling on whoever's smuggling them. And that kind of makes sense, because if you think about, like, the green guys is what they call them, the immigration people, but they wrap you up so quick and they're really intimidating if you aren't used to, like, American police. I'm sure these Chinese people are like, yo, I'm about to be led out and shot. I mean, I'm sure that's what they think. They're like, shit, I got myself into a pickle. So they immediately think, okay, what do I have to tell? And also that's just been acculturated to them, whereas, people who are aware of their rights, and just Americans in general, you have a transgressional relationship with police, as you should. Respect in everyday life, but if you're a criminal, and this is where kind of, especially with the BLM kind of stuff, this is another non sequitur, but it's like the public and criminals shouldn't have the same, like, motives, like, leave it to the criminals to say F you police, and the society to be a fan of police. Anyway, so opened in 1975, like I said, numerous high-profile individuals have been held at MCC New York during court proceedings, including Gambino crime bosses John Gotti and Jackie D'Amico, drug dealer Frank Lucas, Ponzi scheme fraudster Bernard Madoff, terrorist Omar Abdel Rahman, Ramzi Youssef, I'm also going to click John Gotti, Gambino. I'm just flashing with these guys' little caption pictures. God, Frank Lucas had a nasty ass scar on the side of his face. And then Ponzi himself, or not Ponzi himself, but Bernard Madoff. And I'll be doing, articles and podcasts on some, like, high profile gangsters and stuff. This is the type of stuff that interests me, because I'm a convict. But and then also Juaquin El Chapo Guzman. I've got a funny story about that name. Just a guy who is 5150, a completely loony, yelling that name, Juaquin El Chapo Guzman, through the vents in all the vents are interconnected, and for days on end in a Stateville. And I mean, I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and he'd still be going, Juaquin El Chapo Guzman. And then he'd start talking about a Chinese triad. Just like these rote, odd tics almost, I'd call them. But anyway, things you hear and remember in prison. But, so it is the same height. The correctional center is housed in a 12-story high-rise building located on 150 Park Row in the Civic Center neighborhood. As of the 1st of February 2017, it had 796 inmates. Okay, let me look at that number real quick for you. This is an article by the New York Post, the journalism outlet that actually is doing journalism. Okay. Let me just show you. It's actually meant. Oh, I didn't have it. Oh no, BOP. It's meant to hold 200 people. It's not meant to hold that many people. When these prisons were built, mind you, the drug problem and all that wasn't nearly what it was, and they've just ballooned in size. And but what they do is they'll just start welding bunks on top of each other, because it used to be single cell like accommodations. You could smoke cigarettes. The way it's designed is like they have these like a center of the building is where you have all the picnic table, or not picnic tables, they're just tables where you eat, and then off of that towards the four corners of the building are housing units, and there's a top and the bottom. So, you walk up to the center, and that's kind of like the little commons area. There's no fresh air. And at MCC San Diego, the conditions were so bad, there's motherfucking clouds of gnats coming out of the trash cans. Cockroaches, I've never seen cockroaches this big. Well, I take that back. I've seen them in L.A., but not in prison. Okay, I haven't seen cockroaches. I'm talking that goddamn big, and they were not even scared of humans at all, and they would just come, like, you'd be sitting there looking at the ceiling, and they'd come crawling out the vent. And apparently the guys who work maintenance, like, there are whole sections of the boiler rooms that were just overrun. Like, if you shined a flashlight at them, you know, they scatter. First of all, they wouldn't even really move. They just kind of like writhe, but they looked like massive cockroaches on some of these really goopy ass pipes that are down there. And wow. And there's horror stories in prisons about you get a tray that's got a mouse or a cockroach or something like that in there, and that does happen because they like where the food is. And there's something about permanent habitation that really, gets mice and shit like that. Just, yeah, so this is level 3 operation. Level 3 is, like, kind of lockdown. So that's what they're in right now. But, and I don't think it's going to say how many they're supposed to hold. Usually it'll say capacity. Oh, population 0, total inmates, because it's temporarily closed right now, and I think they're probably doing a lot of overhauls on the inside. Like I said, these places are rough on the inside, and then also probably Ghislaine Maxwell. They probably don't want anybody housed there, so yeah, this article by New York Post is talking about how. It just closed basically this past fall. But, okay, so real quick. As of February 2017, it had 796 inmates, both male and female, which is far more than its design capacity of 449. Yeah, the one in MCC was the same way, except it had 1,200. 1,200 motherfuckers. And the floors where people were, like, waiting to do time or whatever, at least 1,200 was my calculation, just off of, because I worked, my job was pushing carts at one point, so I gotta get a idea. And then also, if you ever went to the law library or the actual library, which is the worst library I've ever been to in a prison, because libraries are actually pretty sweet in most prisons. Even privatized prisons have awesome libraries. It's just because books are given away at a lot of state libraries. Usually they'll get their old books, and I'm actually doing they'll give their books away, but this is actually a book that I got out of a prison. Boop. It's got cards. I'm doing a Fyodor Dostoevsky podcast after this, but recording it. But this has got cards going back to the late 80s. Yeah, so that book did like 30 years, and I released it. It was given to me by a librarian. So here are some of the people past and present, or not present because it's closed. And here we go. I guess they have Brooklyn. I guess they have 2. See, and that's similar to how it is in the LA area, because so they have one in Brooklyn and one in Manhattan. That kind of makes sense. I mean, that just shows you how much cases they process out of these areas. They're big metropolitan areas. A lot of federal indictments, and also if you're caught in the area, like in the tri-state area, New Jersey, even Pennsylvania, like in Philly. Although Philly might, I think Philly might have some type of federal thing going on. I know they have several federal prisons inside Pennsylvania, including Allenwood, a couple. The Smooth program. We're gonna get to all these places eventually and learn a little bit of something about them. But yeah, the one that you would know the most is Jeff Epstein. Right here, found dead in prison on August 10th, 2019, after being removed from a suicide watch. And then we got Ross Ulbricht. He's actually he was at USP Florence, which is one of the next prisons we're going to talk about. And USP Tucson is it's like a snitch joint, although, and I'm not saying that that's what's going on with him. It's just you have to sign a piece of paper that you won't beat up any sex offenders once you go there. So, which is like, dude, if you're a guy who's like a computer whiz, you know, like you're trying to stay out the way. I don't blame him for signing that paperwork for that, but I do just because that's the big sex offender joint in like the whole country. That's where you're gonna find, what is his name? The guy, the gymnast, or the gym doctor or whatever, Larry Nassar. Of that ilk, Larry Nassar's gonna be there. And, yeah, big old shithole. So, but yeah, we're going to talk about Jeff Epstein's death and how crazy it really is to think about from a guy who's been to a facility that's like that same exact archetype. You know, the first thing to say, well, first of all, I titled the essay version of this, but basically was a reference to Ghislaine Maxwell. More often just kind of talking about her life as she's, you know, going about her day. And as it says right here, and I think she's probably at MCC Brooklyn, but like I said, they're all the same. But they have one female wing, 7 general population male wings, 6 of which feature cells, and 1 is a dorm. 1 special housing unit, so that's a SHU, that's the whole, and 1 supermax unit. Each unit takes up 2 stories, as I said. All general population units feature a gym, no weights. What they're talking about is a fucking dip bar. That's not a gym. There's such jokes. It's literally a dip bar and a pull-up bar. If that's a gym, although there's a one of those little row machines kind of thing, but it's like by the on the unit that I was in on the 4th floor in MCC San Diego, it was like where all the cockroaches were coming out of. So elliptical, that's what it is. So and sorry if chewing tobacco looks gross, but it's just the way it is. I chew tobacco. Anyway, inmates in the 10 South Wing are locked inside 23 hours a day and continually monitored on CCTV cameras and have lights on at all times. Prisoners are kept isolated. Their cells are equipped with showers, and only then to take them outside their cell for exercise in an indoor cage. So that's talking about the SHU. Okay, so what they just said, you're on camera, that's not true. How Jeffrey Epstein was killed baffles my thinking about this because, first of all, that's not true that they have cameras all over. They can't have cameras all over because they're, especially in a suicide watch unit, because there are men who are naked because they give you a turtle suit. As a matter of fact, they have a job at MCC that I actually tried to get and didn't have enough time for it, but it's an available job, that you're a suicide watch orderly. And you walk around and make sure that, you know, move something, shake something every 20 minutes to a half an hour or something whenever somebody's on suicide watch. And they'll call up, like the nurses in the psychiatric unit, because that's where you're housed when you're on a suicide watch, which is basically the SHU, but it's in the medical center. They will call up and say, we got one on suicide watch. And usually the guy's an SO, he's a sex offender, or getting a gang of time, or you got some bad news, a number of different things that'll put you over the edge. I think Epstein was in all 3 of those at the same time. Wow. Yeah, and so so first of all, cameras, not exactly what they're saying there are. I've been in prisons in Illinois where there are no cameras in the housing units because they don't want you knowing. There's one of the prisons that I was in Shawnee, and I'll talk about this prison eventually. it was a medium max, but they had all kinds of staff assaults, all kinds of shit, like where they would attack a staff member. Either a couple guys or one guy would just have a little, duke it out with a CO. Well, whatever you do to that CO, they're gonna do 20 times worse back to you and in front of everybody. And that camera footage is gonna be gone. So a lot of times these CCTV cameras, they might be recording, they might just be passively observing and on a 24-hour retape loop, So the only way they keep any tape is if something happens. So how that would work is they basically just drag their feet for a while and then file the report after they know the 24 hours is, elapsed. Not that I've never had any situation like that, but I know that that's why, dude, there's no reason why you wouldn't have cameras in this, surveillance freaky ass world that we got going on here. But apparently not in maximum and medium security prisons. Like, nah, don't need it. So this is, let me tell you about the MCC, just because the way it's built. You have to get to an elevator through a door where there is a camera directly trained on your face from every unit, right? To get down the elevator, you have to call call down somebody in the bubble, and not just the floor bubble, because every floor, usually in a newer prison, has like a bubble, like a control room where they can unlock and lock doors. Well, MCC is an older prison. It doesn't have that type of bubble in it, in any of the units. The officer just has he has a office in the unit, and he does rounds, and he just walks around. Newer prisons, they have this little laser key where they have to tap a little hole that basically says, "Hey, I walked." And older prisons like a Shawnee or an MCC will just have a locked clipboard that they have to get to and sign every half hour. Usually it's every half hour they're walking. Basically what I'm saying, the cameras aren't that much of a deal in the unit, but getting to an elevator and then getting down that elevator, you are, smile, you're on candid camera. And then once you get down to the first floor wouldn't be an option for Epstein's killers to go out or kill or whatever, because it would literally, you'd pass through what's called the gatehouse in a regular prison. It's where you walk out if you're an inmate and you're getting released. But there, to get out, even if you're you have to provide identification, and this applies to inmates, to where if you hand them your identification, which is a little BOP ID card, first of all, they just take it from you and you don't get it back, but you get this little card with your money on it for your trip home. They call up, even though they know you're coming, they have your paperwork right there. To get that door open, they have to clear it with, I don't know exactly who they're calling, but they're calling somebody, probably a lieutenant or something like that. Or I know Illinois has to call their counts in, or any major disturbances. Like if anybody goes on a hunger strike, they have to report that to Springfield. There's a reporting of who came in and who left that prison. Now, probably where Jeff Epstein's killers, if we're going with that theory, where they left out of was the garage, because the garage is where all the police store their cars and everything, and that's also where the big buses come and drop off prisoners. All kinds of cameras there too. And if you think about it, there's an instance recently where this poor girl at a Burger King was shot in Harlem. They found the man because of all the cameras. Okay, this is New York City. This isn't in the middle of fucking nowhere, which most prisons are in, is the middle of nowhere. There are so many damn cameras around MCC Manhattan, and there's only 2 exits. First, there's there's the main floor, and the other thing about that main floor, and the garage. First of all, the main floor and the garage, both of them, you have serious exposure, face up, having to present an ID with maybe 4 or 5 choke points from the elevator up on Jeff Epstein's floor, which is probably the 6th or the 3rd. Probably the shoe is probably located where the medical is, or it would be on the 6th or something like that. I don't know, but apparently he's in the shoe because he's basically in protection. I'm not exactly sure, but it would make a big difference if there's a serious inquest about this and they weren't just trying to hide facts and figures. There's no way that man is getting, or whoever did this to Jeff Epstein and limited our ability to find out who he was extorting. There's no way it wouldn't have been caught on camera, basically what I'm saying. It's right in the center of Manhattan. It's not, yeah, so yes, is it possible that he was killed? Yes, absolutely. But what I want to stress here is the amount of collusion and the amount of cooperation and the amount of conspiring that it would take for this to actually come off as it did. I'm gonna look this up right quick. Jeff Epstein, what is it? The guards. Yeah, because they did get let off. I'm not sure if they got a sentence. Okay, yeah, community service. Although I don't think they did it. Just because, honestly, wow, those are... Okay, so Michael Thomas and Tova Noel were supposed to check in on Epstein every 30 minutes and that he'd commit suicide. First of all, the female wasn't even supposed to be on that deck. Well, no, it wasn't suicide. But if it was suicide watch, like I said, inmates do the walks. And I don't think they like to talk about that, but you can't have a female walking up in a dude's butt-ass naked in the cell. It's just not... And the other thing that they do commonly... when they're searching men down in a cage that's got a camera right over top of it, they'll put a box over top of it. And that's common practice. It's not unacceptable. It's not administratively taboo. To just put a box over top of it. Now, apparently one of the cameras just happened to be broken. These people know more than was letting on. And then the other thing, the FBI does all the investigations at these facilities. Any facility, if you're trafficking drugs into a facility, you have the FBI to contend with. They do. The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, handles all BOP investigations. So it's not unheard of to have FBI agents or DHS, all kinds of people, because they'll come in and investigate or talk to people who are locked up there, debrief them, whatever the hell they're doing. I mean, there's a lot of people who work with the man. My paperwork's good, and I have my paperwork, just so we know. If you ever want to see it, I'm not a snitch. I got my paperwork, homie. So, U.S. prosecutors ended the criminal case against the 2 Manhattan prison guards tasked with guarding convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein on the night of his suicide, and who admitted to falsifying records. That part is the part that's sketchy. And how they would get these people to do that is find something. A lot of things in this world go around because of extortion. It's just, hey, I find something out about you that maybe you're cheating on your wife, maybe you got gambling debts that I could help you out with, Maybe, you like to dress in women's clothing, or you are an OnlyFans model, or there's videos of you getting your salad tossed by another man or something on the internet. And I could embarrass the shit out of you, and I can buy your silence by either, the carrot or the stick. And so it says, federal prosecutors Thursday asked the judge to dismiss charges against Tova Noel and Michael Thomas in Manhattan following their 6-month deferred prosecution deal reached in May, or following their 6-month deferred prosecution that kept the two jailers out of jail. They instead each agreed to complete 100 hours of community service. Noel and Thomas, who were working overtime shifts, allegedly sat just 5 yards from Epstein's cell, but shopped online and took breaks instead of checking his cell every 30 minutes as required. The guards admitted that they willfully and knowingly lied on forms stating that they'd made the required rounds checking on inmates the night of Epstein's 2019 suicide. So what I would actually imagine is that they knew that these people were lazy, these COs, like that whoever was watching knew that and they remind you, when it says they're working OT, they weren't the ones who were originally assigned to that deck. You get your 40, and they have open shifts, because I know, because like if you're mopping floors or whatever, the COs will sit there and talk to each other, and you overhear them, and they'll say, oh yeah, I put in for this shift and whatever. And cops working, or I wouldn't even call them corrections officers and cops, in my eyes, as a convict, two different animals here. Like I said, or I might have said in this video, but if you tell somebody the imperative of their job is tell somebody to lift up their sack, roll back your foreskin, all right, run your fingers through your hair, spread your butt cheeks, it's going to be a little bit hard to find people who are not sadists, or perverts, or some genre related to that. Yeah, and it even talks about Ghislaine Maxwell, but I think, like I said, I think she's over in Brooklyn. Yeah, so I find that whole thing, I think probably they just spotted these two, and look at this guy, the way he's dressed, he's looking spiffy. I think really they just knew that they were probably lazy, or had arranged it with them. And then the other thing is also, I really think that, oh wow. Sorry, I was just reading something on the screen. That's so bad. There's some guy who went on a racist tirade against somebody. Anyway, yeah, so there you go. I think that these COs could be guilty of something. I just would think that they would. I think there's another CO that got killed, honestly. That's MCC New York. That's the first on this rebranding of American Archipelago, because it used to be its own little channel, and now I'm going to be doing all this on Big Brother Holding Company. And I am Jay Krupke. If you like this content, or you want to hear about any specific prisons, or if you know me from prison, what's up? I had a great reputation in prison. Wasn't a snitch, wasn't into any, homosexual or nefarious kind of stuff, and got along with everybody. Whether you white, black, fucking Chicano, anybody who I knew. Well, there's a couple guys who I never got along with, but Woods. There's a guy named Woods, but anyway. It's been fun. It's been real. And for more on lockups and prison and crime and punishment in America, check us out. We're on all the podcast formats and all the podcast outlets on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. And also, you can follow me on social media. I'm on basically Gettr and Twitter right now under Big Brother HC. And Instagram, I have an account, but I'm just learning how to use Twitter, let alone Instagram. I've been locked up, and I just don't like social media. I really don't. I wish I didn't have to. But if you do anything online, you got to learn how to do it. So, all right, peace out. Hope y'all enjoyed it. this should be access that you don't usually get. So, peace out.